It's important to note that the peace talks had not stopped. It's true that after the events in Nagorno-Karabakh last year, there were no meetings on the level of the leaders, and there were no meetings, physical meetings on the level of foreign ministers, but nevertheless, the sides were exchanging their comments on the draft peace treaty. It's a positive development that first both leaders met in Munich, facilitated by Chancellor Scholz, and 2 days ago, as you mentioned, the foreign ministers met. Our assessment is the following. During the last years, Armenia and Azerbaijan on different forums have agreed the basic principles of peace, basically. Which are those principles? It's the mutual recognition, or rather the reconfirmation of the mutual recognition of each other's territorial integrity based on the Almaty Declaration. And I want to remind that this declaration was adopted by 12 of the post-Soviet states when the Soviet Union dissolved, and the major point of this declaration was that the borders between the former Soviet Socialist republics become interstate borders. The second principle agreed was that the delimitation and further demarcation of the border, state border between Armenia and Azerbaijan would be conducted on the basis of the Almaty Declaration. And the other major issue was and is connectivity, and it was agreed that all regional communications will be unblocked based on the principles of sovereignty, jurisdiction, equality, and reciprocity. We think that if we manage to basically write in these principles, which have already been agreed in the peace treaty, peace is more than achievable, and it's achievable in a very short time frame. Unfortunately, I can't say that we have managed to do that. From our side, obviously, we are ready and we are doing everything we can to reflect these principles in the peace treaty. We haven't been seeing so much eagerness from the Azerbaijani side, that at least that's our assessment. But we hope that we will reach this. So this is our assessment of the situation.
Mr. Hajiev?
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I congratulate Brazil and Turkey for organizing this event, Antalya Diplomatic Forum. It becomes one of the important diplomatic events globally. And we get used to know Antalya as a touristic center of the world, but in the meantime, Antalya and in greater sense Turkey has become a diplomatic center in the world, and I congratulate on this particular remark. With regard to developments in the Caucasus, and for Azerbaijan, war and a conflict is over, and Nagorno-Karabakh, there is no any longer such an issue for Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan exercised its right of self-defense under the UN Charter and liberated its territories from the 30 years long military occupation. That's over for us. And Azerbaijan's agenda is about peace and regional cooperation. And with such an understanding, right after the war 2020, Azerbaijan formulated 5 fundamental principles of the peace agenda between two countries, I mean Armenia and Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan also compiled the text of the peace treaty and presented to Armenian side. And it once again demonstration of the stronger willingness and determination of Azerbaijan to advance peace agenda. Diplomatic negotiations continues between the parties, and the recent Munich security, on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference, leaders meeting was very fruitful and was in a positive atmosphere. We would like to advance based on such parameters. But in the meantime, peace treaty shouldn't be just for the sake of the peace treaty. There should be real ownership, and there should be real and genuine intentions for the peace. And from that regard, Azerbaijan also puts an emphasis for the bilateral component of the peace treaty. And our message is that peace lies between Baku and Yerevan. Peace is not in Paris or in Brussels or somewhere else. These two countries and should come together, making a peace and to advance that an agenda. There is a stronger willingness and political will from Azerbaijan side to transform region of the South Caucasus and to make the Caucasus as a region of peace and security and cooperation. And my president also suggests a model of the integrated region of the South Caucasus where these three countries could come together. And our agenda is also about regional ownership, in a sense where three countries of the South Caucasus should take the regional ownership, not just expect from the other side to impose on certain elements of the cooperation, and should also take a regional responsibility for the sake of the regional cooperation. That's an intention of Azerbaijan. And unfortunately, geographically, one can say that there is one region of the South Caucasus, but politically, unfortunately, that's not the case. For the last 30 years, since the independence of Azerbaijan, we have managed to build a very fruitful model of the regional cooperation between Georgia and Azerbaijan. And Armenia could benefit from that, but there is a question that Armenia should answer. But one element about a peace agenda and a bilateral peace treaty, and recently Azerbaijan and Armenia delegations also met in Berlin, there is a still open question. In our communication, we also asking Armenian side, we are expecting proper explanation for the legal and also constitutional framework of the Republic of Armenia that still holds the element of the miatsum and also territorial claims. Miatsum in Armenian language, it means that unification of Karabakh with Armenia, but also part of the Armenia's constitutional framework. And Almaty Declaration has been highlighted here, but the Republic of Armenia still has 10 preservations with regard to the Almaty Declaration. These are the open legal issues that we do expect that from the Armenian side, there should be genuine peace treaty. But in the meantime, that's an agenda of Azerbaijan to advance a peace treaty, but we should, in the meantime, we should be careful some new developments, but unfortunate and also quite controversial development in the South Caucasus. That export of the geopolitical intrigues that exist outside of the region of the South Caucasus to export it to the region of the South Caucasus. Yet another development is building the new lines of division in the South Caucasus. That's often not helpful, and that should be taken into account in a very serious manner. But in the meantime, Armenia-Azerbaijan border and should be real border, and it should be line of confrontation. From that perspective, we also have a certain open questions to the European mission in Armenia. And also militarization programs and arms race programs shouldn't be encouraged any further. But Azerbaijan will continue to build connectivity linkages in the region of South Caucasus. These connectivity linkages have started not because of the war in Ukraine, far many years before. And together with Georgia and Turkey, we have built railroad components, and we have built energy component of the South Caucasus, Turkey, and Caspian and Black Sea together. And now Middle Corridor gains a particular importance and prominence that will work together along with dimensions. And COP29, and we do hope that will be hosted this year in Azerbaijan, will add new transformative change to the region of the South Caucasus. And among that parameters, we also have a good potential for cooperation. And Azerbaijan, in the same line, will continue to also exert additional efforts for building Black Sea and Caspian energy pipeline and green energy corridor as well. Thank you.
Mr. Hajiev, thank you. Listening to both of you gentlemen, there is a genuine, you're stating from your own position, there is a genuine desire for peace. Listening to you two, I've picked up on multiple common denominators in which there are potential problems. I want to ask each of you one more question before we move on to this panel. Problem or issue number one is the demarcation of the border between the two countries. You didn't specifically address this, but I also feel that there is the international guarantees when it comes to dispute resolution mechanism, and obviously the situation in southern Armenia and the connectivity. Which of these things do you feel is the easiest to achieve to gain some momentum? Mr. Rubinyan.
Thank you. I'll answer your questions, but first a couple of remarks regarding
Sure.
Mr. Hajiev's speech. Well, Mr. Hajiev mentioned that the Azerbaijani side expects some clarifications regarding the constitutional framework of Armenia. Well, first I have to say that the constitution and the legal framework of Armenia is our internal affair, and it has nothing to do with our peace process. I also have to say that Armenia has no territorial claims to Azerbaijan, and it has been stated many times, It has been also reflected in even joint statements signed by both the President of Azerbaijan and the Prime Minister of Armenia. But nevertheless, the best way to clarify, and I mean this from both sides, that the sides don't have any territorial claims towards each other, is writing it down on a paper and signing it. And it's a peace treaty.
Putting pen to paper.
Actually, in the draft peace treaty, there are two clauses which address this issue. First, it's written black on white that Armenia and Azerbaijan, and what I'm referring to are clauses which are agreed, at least preliminarily. One states that Armenia and Azerbaijan recognize each other's territorial integrity and don't have any territorial claims and won't have any territorial claims regarding each other in the future. And there is one other clause which says that the sides shall not refer to their internal legislation in order not to realize the clauses of this agreement. So the best way for both of us actually to assure each other that there are no territorial claims and there should not be any territorial claims in the future is signing a peace treaty. I know Mr. Hajiev likes to say that signing a peace treaty is not rocket science. Well, this is one of the cases where I have to agree. It's indeed not rocket science if what we refer to is basic principles of international law. And I think the principles of territorial integrity, sovereignty, respect of each other's jurisdiction, and opening all communications based on equality and reciprocity are basic principles of international law. So if we have an understanding of this, and at least before on a leaders level, we have confirmed our mutual understanding of this, always left is technical work. Unfortunately, we don't see eagerness from the Azerbaijani side to reflect these agreed principles on paper, but we hope this will change.
Okay.
Your question was regarding demarcation and connectivity. Again, if Azerbaijan reconfirms the agreed principles and agrees to reflect those principles on paper, both issues are very easy to solve. I also have to say that regarding remarks about Armenia militarizing, well, Armenia is not militarizing. Armenia is simply building its defense. It's obvious that Armenia has security concerns which come also from Azerbaijan, and it's our sovereign right to build our defense, and the word defense explains it all. We don't have any aggressive motivation towards any of our neighbors. We recognize the territorial integrity of all our neighbors, and it's our sovereign right to have defense. At the same time, I have to mention that Azerbaijan itself has been and is continuously buying arms from different countries, and we have reasons to think that this is not only for defense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubinyan. Mr. Hajiev, I'll give you a short time to respond to not only Mr. Rubinyan, but also some of the question that I asked in the beginning. I'd like to move on after that.
Thank you. I'm thankful to Mr. Rubinyan that he makes a reference to my particular point that peace treaty is not a rocket science. Indeed, it's not a rocket science. When Azerbaijan formulated 5 principles of peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan, we have driven by the guiding principles of international law. And actually it was Azerbaijan's proposal recognizing one another's territorial integrity and sovereignty right after the war. But the problem is that last 3 years, since the war 2020, Armenia was not a sincere and genuinely interested in the peace, because Armenia was building gray zone on the sovereign territories of Azerbaijan, but also resulted in a sense that Azerbaijan conducted counter-terror operation to liberate completely its territories. That's one thing. And second thing about the peace treaty itself. But Azerbaijan has compiled the text of the peace treaty, and it's in a sense positive that we see advancements step by step, brick by brick on the peace treaty itself. But there are certain legal questions that are serious. It's not my intention to interfere in the internal affairs of the Republic of Armenia unless there is a particular clause that deals my country. But the declaration on the independence of the Republic of Armenia, that's also in the preamble of the Constitution of the Republic of Armenia, and also official representative and legal representative of the Republic of Armenia, International Court of Justice, in their case of legal cases against the Republic of Azerbaijan, they maintain particular clauses with regard to territorial integrity and sovereignty of Azerbaijan. That's a serious question about the Azerbaijani side and expecting proper answer from the Armenian side. And also border delimitation issue, Mr. Moderator, that you have asked. On the border delimitation issue, everybody knows that it's in a technical process, it's in a time-consuming process, but the problem is that last 30 years, Armenian side didn't contribute of building the border between two countries. For Armenian side, border was a line of occupation through the central part of Azerbaijan. That's one problem. Second issue is that 8 villages of Azerbaijan are still under the occupation of Armenia. But regardless of all of these challenges, our proposal and our idea is that step by step we should move forward. And on the border delimitation issue and peace treaty agenda shouldn't be hostage of the border delimitation process that's going to take some more time between two countries. But again, peace treaty, Azerbaijan's approach is that should be a bilateral process and should be also the process that Armenia and Azerbaijan should build the regional security of architecture between two countries that could also withstand different challenges, including the security challenges. And Azerbaijan's intention is to build a region of the South Caucasus, but based on the peace and cooperation and the model of the integration.
Չմոռանաք հավանել տեսանյութը եւ բաժանորդագրվել Civic AM-ի YouTube-յան էջին։